once upon a time, in a quiet little garden tucked behind an old brick house, there lived a cheerful gnome named Norman, whose round red hat was always slightly askew, and whose chubby porcelain cheeks were forever rosy from the sun. For years and years, Norman stood guard over the marigolds and daffodils, his tiny boots rooted firmly to the same mossy spot, watching the world go by, the flutter of butterflies, the scamper of squirrels, the slow march of clouds across the sky, while secretly dreaming of adventure. One evening, as the first stars winked awake, and fireflies drifted like living lanterns through the dusk, Norman gazed up at the lavender sky and sighed, wishing with all his heart to see beyond the garden fence, to explore the mysteries of the neighborhood he had only glimpsed from afar. Just then, a silvery streak darted across the heavens, a shooting star, and Norman closed his eyes tight, making his wish as the star dissolved into the night. Moments later, a soft breeze rustled the petals of a nearby dandelion, its white puffball trembling, and suddenly, oh so gently, one tiny seed detached itself, floating down, until it landed right on Norman's hat. And this was no ordinary dandelion seed, for it shimmered faintly, as if dusted with leftover starlight, and before Norman could wonder at it, the breeze returned, stronger now, lifting the seed and lifting Norman with it. Up they rose, higher than the hollyhocks, higher than the apple tree, until the entire garden spread out below like a patchwork quilt of green and gold. And Norman, heart fluttering with delight, clung to his floating seed as it carried him over the fence and into the velvety night, where adventures unknown and wonderfully gentle awaited. As the dandelion seed carried Norman higher into the velvety night, the world below unfolded like a softly painted picture, each rooftop dusted with moonlight, each winding path lined with the faint glow of fireflies, and the distant murmur of a brook whispering secrets to the reeds. The air smelled of honeysuckle and freshly turned earth, and Norman's heart swelled with quiet joy as he drifted past chimney tops and over slumbering gardens, his tiny boots brushing against the silken petals of night-blooming flowers. Below him, a cat pricked its ears at the shimmering seed, but soon tucked its nose back into its paws, dreaming its own dreams. Norman wondered where the breeze might take him, and as if in answer, the seed dipped gently toward a cobbled lane where lanterns hung like golden apples, their light spilling onto the stones in buttery pools. There, nestled between two towering oaks, stood a little wooden gate, its hinges creaking softly in the wind, its paint peeled and patchy with age. And yet it seemed to hum with a quiet energy, as if it had been waiting just for him. Something about it tugged at Norman's curiosity, though he couldn't say why. Perhaps it was the way the ivy curled around its posts like welcoming arms, or the faint, sweet scent of cinnamon that drifted through its slats. The seed hovered for a moment, as if giving him a choice, and Norman, emboldened by the stillness of the night, reached out a small porcelain hand toward the gate's latch, wondering what gentle mysteries lay beyond. Norman's fingers brushed against the cool metal latch, and with a soft click, the little wooden gate swung inward, revealing a hidden garden unlike any he had ever seen, where flowers bloomed in shades of moonlight and silver, their petals glowing faintly as if woven from dreams. A winding path of pebbles, each one smooth and shimmering like a tiny pearl, led between bushes of velvety blue leaves that rustled with a sound like distant wind chimes. And overhead, branches heavy with luminous fruit arched together, forming a living tunnel of soft gold light. Norman stepped forward, his boots sinking slightly into moss so thick and springy it felt like walking on clouds. And as he wandered deeper, the air grew sweeter, swirling with the delicate scent of vanilla and elderflower, while fireflies, larger and brighter than any in his old garden, danced around him in slow, looping circles, their light pulsing gently like heartbeat. Beside the path, a shallow stream chuckled over stones flecked with mica, its water clear as glass, and just as cool when Norman paused to dip his fingers in, sending ripples outward that shimmered with colors he couldn't name: lavender, peach, the palest blue, before fading back into the current. Just ahead, where the path curved around an ancient willow tree, whose trailing leaves dripped with dewdrops like liquid diamonds, something rustled in the ferns. A small fox with fur the color of cinnamon and eyes like polished amber emerged, tilting its head curiously at Norman before trotting closer, its paws silent on the moss. And to his amazement, the fox spoke in a voice as soft as the breeze, saying hello. Would you like to see where the path leads? And though Norman had never spoken to an animal before, it felt perfectly natural to nod and follow as the fox led him onward, past clusters of mushrooms that glowed like little lamps, past a thicket where butterflies with wings like stained glass fluttered sleepily among the blossoms, until they reached a clearing where the night sky opened wide above them, scattered with stars so bright, and close Norman felt he might reach up and pluck one like a berry. In the center of the clearing stood a round stone table etched with strange, looping symbols that shimmered when he looked at them, and upon it rested a teapot of delicate porcelain, steaming with a fragrance that made Norman's nose twitch warm honey and spiced apple, as if it had just been poured moments ago, though no one else was there. The fox leaped lightly onto a nearby stump, curling its tail around itself, and nodded toward the teapot with a knowing blink, as if this mysterious picnic had been set just for him. And Norman, feeling both wonder and a quiet sense of rightness, climbed onto the cushioned stool beside the table, his heart full of the gentle magic of this hidden world, ready to discover what other soft surprises awaited in this garden between twilight and dawn. As Norman sat at the stone table, sipping tea that tasted like sunshine and childhood memories. The cinnamon fox settled beside him with wise amber eyes. The warmth spreading through Norman's porcelain body wasn't just from the tea, it was the glow of understanding, dawning as slowly as morning light. This hidden garden wasn't merely a place. It was a secret conversation between the world's quietest wonders. And the fox explained in its breezy voice that every shooting star carries wishes like seeds, planting them where they're needed most. Norman's longing for adventure had grown as patiently as the marigolds he once guarded. And when his wish took flight, the night had answered by showing him that magic exists in the spaces between garden fences and starry skies, between footsteps and flight, between wishing and finding. The shimmering dandelion seed had chosen him not to take him far away, but to remind him that adventure begins with curiosity, and that every ordinary thing, a gate, a path, a cup of tea, holds extraordinary stories if you pause to listen. Around them, the garden sighed contentedly. Luminous flowers tilted their faces toward him. The willow's dewdrop jewels trembled in approval, and even the engraved symbols on the stone table pulsed gently, their looping shapes resolving into words Norman suddenly knew: welcome home, little traveler. For home wasn't just his mossy spot by the marigolds. It was the boundless belonging he felt beneath this sky, among these quiet conspirators of magic. The fox nuzzled his hand, its cinnamon fur smelling of fallen leaves and new beginnings. And Norman realized the greatest discovery of his journey wasn't the hidden garden or the talking creatures, but the understanding that he'd never been as small or as still as he'd believed. He was part of something vast and kind, woven into the night's gentle tapestry, like firefly light stitched into dark velvet. Somewhere beyond the clearing, a stream giggled over polished stones, and the air hummed with the promise of dawn, pale as a pearl at the edge of the world. Norman's eyelids grew heavy, lulled by the fox's purring breaths and the teacup's warmth against his fingers. And as he drifted toward sleep right there at the starlit table, the last thing he noticed was the dandelion seed, now glowing brighter than ever, lifting from his hat to dance once more on the breeze, carrying with it his gratitude, his wonder, and the quiet certainty that whenever he looked up at the night sky, the sky would be smiling back. Norman never knew when the garden came back into view. Only that one moment he was blinking up at the starry clearing, and the next he felt the familiar tickle of moss beneath his boots, the sturdy presence of marigolds bowing sleepily around him. The night air was sweet with the scent of dew-kissed petals, and the apple trees' branches swayed above him like a lullaby. His adventure had folded itself back into the dark like a treasured secret, but his heart still hummed with its warmth. The fireflies had returned too, drifting lazily over the grass as if they'd never left, their golden glow guiding Norman to his favorite spot beneath the hollyhocks. He settled onto the soft earth, his porcelain cheeks still faintly pink with the memory of Starlight. And as he straightened his askew red hat, he noticed something, a single dandelion seed, glowing softly where it had landed on his sleeve. He smiled, tucking it carefully into his pocket, a tiny piece of magic to keep close. The garden seemed to sigh around him, the flowers whispering good night, the leaves rustling like shared confidences, and Norman's eyelids grew heavy as the moon painted silver paths across the grass. Somewhere beyond the fence, an owl hooted a dreamy farewell, and the breeze, the same breeze that had carried him into the sky, returned just long enough to brush his cheek like a kiss before drifting away. Tomorrow the sun would rise, the butterflies would return, and the world would be ordinary again. But Norman knew now that ordinary things could hold the sweetest magic of all. He curled into the crook of a friendly tree root, listening to the slow, steady heartbeat of the night. And as his eyes fluttered closed, he thought he heard, or maybe dreamed, the distant chuckle of a stream, the murmur of a fox's goodbye, and the faint, familiar chime of a star being wished upon, far, far away. The garden held its breath. The fireflies dimmed their lights one by one, and Norman slept, wrapped in the gentlest kind of knowing that the world was wide and soft and full of wonder. But for now, the softest wonder of all was rest. Sleep well, little gnome. The stars will keep watch,